Hello everyone. Today I will be featuring a ship that, well, we have had the chance to test a couple of times, but this is the final version of this ship. And that is of course the Musashi. This is on the PTS server, as on the live server where we still have the old version of this ship, whereas on the PTS we have the new one. The most significant change is of course the reduction in reload. The Musashi used to have a 35-second reload, but they buffed it to 30 seconds. So if you run the reload mod, which is of course something I highly recommend on both the Yamato and the Musashi, then you got a 26.4-second reload on these massive guns. And these guns are of course terrifying. I mean, it's Yamato guns. The difference is naturally the Sigma, 1.8 Sigma versus Yamato's 2.1 Sigma. And other differences are it sits higher in the water, it has less AA, pretty much the same differences that we had in the past. However, this reload buff is a significant increase in DPM, and of course if your dispersion does favor you, the ship is a monster. I mean, there's not really any other way of describing it besides it's a monster. The Musashi is straight up overpowered for tier 9. If you put it against other battleships, it just eats them alive. Missouri, Friedrich der Große, Izumo, none of those really put up much of a fight. Iowa, like all of these tier 9 battleships, none of them really have much to say to the Musashi. The Musashi is a monster. It's straight up overpowered. I don't think there's really any other way of describing it. It was overpowered before they buffed the guns. After the buff, it's even more overpowered. However, that's mostly compared to other tier 9s. Compared to tier 10s, it's still only a worse Yamato. That's really fundamentally what it is. It's a worse Yamato. And it doesn't really matter how much they change or tweak, or unless they do some significant changes, the ship is basically going to be a worse Yamato from start to finish. So is it interesting enough to actually invest XP in? The final cost of this ship is 750k XP. There's been some rumors about 920k, but that's wrong. It's 750k free XP. Exactly the same as the Missouri. And the Missouri will of course be removed, and this ship will replace it and become the only free XP ship you can get, or well, only tier 9 free XP ship you can get. So the question is, well, hello, there we go. I finally got rid of that press shift to whatever blah 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 text. Like the replays have been fairly glitchy as of late, but I think we finally got rid of it. I hope. Hopefully it won't pop up during the rest of the replay. Anyway, no, oh, there it is again. Jesus Christ. Right. Why should you get this ship? If you don't have Yamato, if you don't have Missouri, the Musashi is a great ship to get. I mean, you pen angled ships fairly easily because of the overmatch. The amount of damage you can pump out is absolutely absurd because of how strong these guns are. In fact, this Moskva, he's giving me pretty much almost full broadside. He's barely moving. I popped the spotter plane. Worth noting, by the way, that the spotter plane is actually changed on a Musashi compared to the other ships. I think the spotter plane lasts 2 minutes and it has a 100-second cooldown. So you actually have significantly more uptime on the spotter plane. Also, double fighter plane is actually pretty viable on the Musashi compared to other battleships, because fighter plane has something like a 1 minute cooldown and a really long uptime. So double fighter planes would actually give it some needed help against DDs and carriers should you choose to run it. It would, however, require you to spec differently than you normally spec on IGN battleships. I'm of course using my Yamato captain, but the option is certainly there. The strength certainly exists. Now, first glance, you look at this and you look, Flamu, you have 129k damage. We are 4.5 minutes into the game. This is ridiculous. And I would kind of, first of all, I agree. I think the Musashi is straight up overpowered, but the Sigma differences cannot be understated. What you have seen so far is really good RNG. You have seen really good RNG, really good dispersion, and things like that don't last. It starts slowly to basically fall apart. Dispersion on this ship is significantly more random than on the Yamato, and the more you play it, the more you realize, the more you see the differences. You can have great RNG that I've had at the start of this game, and then you can have horrible RNG, and That's of course the impact of having significantly less sigma. Even if you aim well, your dispersion can be all over the place. Moskva turning to give even more broadside. I think I aimed a bit too high. I think I aimed a bit too high there, so not really the best of example, but don't worry, we'll get plenty of more examples to show you why this thing really isn't a Yamato. He's turning full broadside. He's turning almost perfect broadside. This time I would say my aim was pretty damn good. He's angling in a bit, but that should still be dispersion all around him. Okay, maybe I misaimed. Maybe I misaimed twice. Maybe I aimed poorly twice in a row. So, you're perfectly justified to think, that was Flamu, maybe your aim wasn't really that good. He grounded. Full broadside. He's reversing. I aim slightly above his waterline, simply because I just want a couple of big hits on him. I go for the safe hits, full broadside. Yeah. That's the difference between the Musashi and the Yamato. The Yamato would have killed this Moskva about 1 minute ago, maybe 1.5 minutes ago. The Musashi, on the other hand, struggles. When the RNG doesn't favor it, the Musashi struggles. And that's really what it comes down to. Are you willing to deal with this struggle? Are you willing to deal with this dispersion that kind of giveth and taketh away just as equally? Just to have what is basically a Yamato clone. If you have 750k XP and you don't have the Yamato, I would highly recommend just getting the Yamato. I mean, if you get the Yamato, on the way you'll unlock amazing ships like the Fuso and the Amagi, both battleships that are amazing for their tier. And eventually you'll get the Yamato, which is of course a monster at tier 10. Or you can get this Musashi, which is a nerfed Yamato, still. That hasn't changed. That's pretty much, there's really no fancy way of putting it. Now, it's overpowered against other battleships. Significantly overpowered against other battleships because it eats them alive. However, against DDs, against carriers, it suffers. It suffers heavily. It has no real way of dealing with DDs. The double fighter plane system, once again, interesting dispersion. The double fighter plane gives it some flexibility against DDs, but it really has almost no defense against carriers. Even fighter planes are pretty weak in general. So if you would want a more universal build for the Musashi, then going for the direction center, which gives you double planes, and then going for fighter planes would be an option. Of course, you lose the spotter plane, which is incredibly useful for punishing smoked up ships, so one can debate whether it's worth it or not. But it is an option. Ultimately though, I'd much rather prefer to have the Missouri. I much more enjoy the Missouri, because fundamentally the Musashi plays exactly like the Yamato does. You sit nose in, you try to take as aggressive position as you dare, and then you kind of hang around in that position for the rest of the game. That's how you play Yamato. That's the Yamato gameplay. It's not a flexible, maneuverable battleship like many others, like for example the Montana that can be, or the Conqueror, that are significantly more flexible and can move around the map. The Yamato has such poor concealment and such high citadel size that it doesn't get away with doing the same things. Also, of course, Musashi sits even higher in the water than the Yamato, so the weaknesses of the Yamato are even weaker on the Musashi. So, if you don't have Missouri, if you don't have Yamato, and you really want the tier 9 moneymaker and XP grinder, Musashi is incredible. It's incredible. If you have the Missouri, why not just get the Yamato instead? You're gonna be most of the time you're gonna be facing tier 10s like I'm facing here. That's gonna be the majority of your matchmaking. You're gonna be fighting tier 10s. Yes, there are this few rare cases where you'll end up against tier 7s, but spending 750k XP on the chance of facing unusual matchmaking is not really that good of an investment in my opinion. I still think the Missouri is a better ship for win rate, a better ship for credit and money making and XP gain in general. Now, I asked Wargaming, because the stats on this ship are final. The ship you see right now is the ship you're going to get when the ship goes live. That much we know. But I asked them if the XP and credit gains are final, and they wouldn't comment. They couldn't comment. In fact, let me see if I have this comment here. Let's see. Clarification please, is Musashi credit gain also final? Question mark. And then we said, We cannot comment on the credit grind right now. Also bear in mind, if we do make tweaks, they'll likely be made when transitioning to live. So I really don't know. However, I will say the economy gain of the Musashi as of right now is weaker than the Missouri. I don't know if it has to do with the fact that you tend to shoot significantly more battleships than anything else in the Musashi, because of course that's what the Musashi is especially good at. That's what those big guns are especially good at. But I've had these great games, hugely strong games, and I run both the Zulu flag and I run premium, and the credit gain has been underwhelming. Games where I would get 30-40% more credits in the Missouri, I have not received the same in the Musashi. In fact, the credit gain feels very much like your average premium instead of like a super moneymaker like the Mighty Mo. Whether or not that's final, once again, I can't say because Wargaming refused to comment on it. But if it is final, then the Musashi will be significantly worse at generating credits than the Missouri is. More than anything though, the Musashi is probably significantly more reliant on division play than the Missouri is. The Missouri has the advantage of kind of being able to deal with everything. It's not amazing at anything, but it's really good against everything. It's good against other battleships because it's got great turret setup and you can angle and you're extremely tanky, and it's got good guns with good caliber and so forth. It's good against cruisers, especially smoke cruisers, thanks to the radar. It's good against DDs for the same reason. It's fairly strong against carriers because it has IBA AA, which means that carriers in general prefer to go for other targets. Musashi, on the other hand, it's amazing against battleships, pretty good against cruisers that let it shoot them for some reason. Once again, most of the time you should know exactly where the Musashi is, where he's pointed and so forth, because that's kind of how the playstyle works. But if a cruiser lets you shoot at them, it's very strong against them as well. But it's incredibly weak against carriers, and it's incredibly weak against destroyers. Yes, it has the amazing torpedo belt. I think it's something like 55% torpedo reduction, but fundamentally it's not the torpedo damage that kills you, it's of course the flooding. Flooding forces repair, then you get burned to death, or you repair because of fires and then you get flooded to death, and so forth. Or even worse, you're forced to angle against torpedoes and you have to give broadside, something which of course the Musashi and the Yamato are both exceptionally weak at. So it's great against battleships, it's pretty meh against everything else. Which is kinda the Yamato. That's pretty much sums up the Yamato. Yamato is a bit better at everything, and that's pretty much it. I have really hard... the fundamental issue I have with the Musashi is that it's very uninteresting to me. I think to anyone who owns the Yamato, this ship is very uninteresting. It's got the same caliber guns, it's got the same playstyle, same tankiness, same everything. The difference is it's slightly worse at everything, but it's one tier lower. However, with the matchmaking being as it is, that being one tier lower has a very small impact, and more than likely you will be facing other Yamatos anyway. So why get this over the Missouri? If someone asks what should I get, Missouri or Musashi, I will say Missouri every time. Every single time. And they're gonna remove the Missouri, which is even more reason to get the Missouri as of right now, and you can maybe work on the Musashi later if you really must have it. But the value simply isn't there in my eyes. It's an uninteresting, boring premium. I mean, it's Yamato's sister ship, and they stayed true to the fact that it's very similar, and I can't really blame them for that. But 750k XP for a Yamato clone? I mean, of course you could argue that the Missouri is an Aiva clone, but the Missouri has the radar, which is a significant difference in utility and strength. And of course it prints credits and so forth, which it's possible that the Musashi will eventually do. They might change it, it's not final, but as of right now I'm not holding my breath. The big difference is of course that Missouri has so much more potential to carry than the Musashi has, simply because the radar you push into caps, you can push closer caps, radar DDs, you can help defend against carrier strikes. You just have more impact on the outcome of the game in the Missouri than you ever will in the Musashi. If you do get games where a bunch of like something like a standard battle here, then of course the Musashi will be a monster. You can just sit and farm people who try to push into you, and you can just kill them off one by one. But those that play the game know that this is probably less of a common thing than one would hope if you're playing this ship. Zao setting me on fire, it's torps in return. I of course run fire prevention because this is my Yamato captain. Because of the the strength of the spotter and fighter planes, direction center might be stronger, but in general, very little use. Is this guy gonna pop out? He's gonna give me some flat broadside if he pops out. I'm undetected. Not bothering to heal, of course, because I want AR to kick in and give me that faster reload. It looks like he's finally reversing. Oh, he's about to peek out. This should be some good damage, considering the size of these guns. There's some pretty okay chunks. Sadly 3 overpens, but overall, of course, the damage against battleships is very, very strong. I angle as he shoots back and he deals 0 damage. This is of course what happens. This is kind of sums up what happens when a 3-bit deck also meets the Musashi. Against other tier 9 battleships, it's just a slaughter. I faced the Izumo earlier and it was stupid how one-sided the fight was. I just angled, he couldn't do anything, whereas I could pin him anywhere because he's coated in 32mm armor. So versus an Izumo, you just kind of eat the Izumo alive. This game isn't really that interesting. The DD keeps running away until finally I hit him with a single shell and the game ends. And I end with 239,000 damage, which I consider to be quite good. But the money rewards are only 795k. This is with premium. This is with the Zulu flag. So that's a significant increase in the normal credit gain. And we only got 794k credits, or 795. In the Missouri, I'm pretty sure this would have been 1,000,000 credits, at least. But in the Musashi, nowhere near. Team score wise, I mean, we topped the scoreboard, tier 9. If you get games like this, you can of course have a huge impact on the game. But this was kind of the dream case where basically you got to fire at will at a lot of broadsides and a lot of targets in general, which doesn't always happen. I also didn't really have any DD harassment on me, which also doesn't really happen. There was no carrier, which is pretty common, I guess. Carriers are not that popular, but whenever there's a carrier, and once the carriers realize how bad the Musashi AA is, you can bet that they will be focusing you heavily. Especially AP bombers are going to love the Musashi, considering how large it is. It's so easy to land all those bombs. Detailed report, not really much to it. 81 hits, pretty good average damage. We wrecked the Yamato, we wrecked the Moskva, we wrecked the Amagi, we wrecked the Montana. We did some significant damage to Friede Grosse, and we did some damage to a Grossovoy that we finally killed. And then we look at credits and XP. We can see it's 662k credits. That's with premium. Without premium, it would be 441k credits. That's without premium. So the gains are underwhelming. Or the money gains are very underwhelming as of right now. If this is final, once again, as I mentioned, I can't say that for certainty, but my initial impressions of the money gains is that the Missouri will just be a significantly better moneymaker than this ship can be. Even if they buff it to the same modifier that the Missouri has, the fundamental issue comes down to the fact that the Missouri by nature shoots much more cruisers and DDs because better concealment and radar allows it to shoot things like that much easier, whereas the Yamato will kind of be stuck farming battleships most of the time. And of course the money gain for doing such a thing is much lower because the game rewards you on percentage based damage. So if Missouri does 100k damage to DDs and cruisers and Musashi does 100k to battleships, the Missouri credit gain will probably be almost twice as much, even with the same modifier. So that is of course something that remains to be seen, but unless they give it some significant buffs in this aspect, I don't ever see it matching the Missouri in terms of credit and XP gain. Anyway, I won't bother going over my build since I'm basically just using my Yamato captain and I have plenty of Yamato commentaries on my channel and you can check out the build there. So far though, I'm going to be buying the Musashi on my main account, but that's because I have like 2.7 million free XP, so 750 is like a drop in the ocean, drop of water in the ocean. And I will probably check if they change the credit gain once it goes live. So if you are undecided, you could just wait and let me test and see if they've done something to the credit gain. If they haven't, then I'm gonna have an even harder time really recommending the ship. As of now, I can only really recommend the ship if you have the Missouri, you have plenty of free XP sitting around, and you either have or for some reason don't want the Yamato. Then I can recommend the Musashi. Otherwise, I don't really see the point of the ship. Sorry, I don't really see the point of it. Anyway, that was all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it.